Hey guys, so I wanted to just share some thoughts on what it takes to kind of make lifestyle changes, whatever it may be, whether it's starting a business or learning some new valuable skill like a language, or in my case, to use a personal example, becoming a proficient software developer, or getting in shape again, losing that belly fat, which is also something that I'm starting to take very seriously. Whatever it is, there's certain key elements that can kind of make or break the venture. Um, and so I was just kind of pondering it and came up with four ideas. I'm kind of curious what you guys think. So the first one is having a concrete timeline. Um, and it doesn't have to be absolute, if, let's say you want to, what's a good example? Well, let's go to Japanese. So let's say you want to pass the Japanese N2, which is the second most difficult level, and you want to pass it by, say, December, December 1st, okay? And so you study like crazy, and you're ready for the test, and you don't pass the test. Well, in that case, you can just adjust and say, okay, well, I'm going to pass it by the next round or something like that. But as long as it's kind of this weird balance between being extremely rigid in terms of your schedule, very strict with yourself and your schedule, but also flexible to any outcomes that you can't control, whether it's, passing a test or getting approved for a loan, or your body responding to your new eating habits in time. Whatever it is, as long as you're putting in the effort on your end and you have a definite point in time by which you want a certain result, that can really help orient you towards making it happen. And personally, when I decided to start my business, I had it was, at first I told myself, okay, I've got to pass the Nihongo no Ryoku Shiken Nikyu, which is in English they say Japanese language proficiency test level 2. Most people just call it N2. I decided I have to pass that first, and so I studied like a demon and took the test in December of 2013. But unfortunately, for some bizarre reason, it takes them 3 months to return the scores to you. Sometimes you just run into things like that over here where it's just like, why? It's a multiple choice test. Anyways, in the interim, while waiting for the results, I overheard some office staff at my current job at the time talking about having certain teachers come in to work on Sundays, which would mean just this bizarre schedule where I'd be able to see my family not very often, and that kind of lit a fire under me. I said, okay, wow, I really need to get started. And so I looked at my I don't know how really to explain it. So Japan has paid vacation time. It's called UQ in Japanese. Most companies, the standard is 10 paid days off outside of holidays, which is really quite nice. But most companies don't encourage you to use them, especially if you're Japanese, just because there's some really backwards, angry, kind of don't know how to think for themselves. In the management class here, they're victims of those who came before them. That's a whole different story. It's become more the case now that it depends on the company. Some people are a little more switched on these days. Anyways, so I looked at things and thought, okay, starting a business is going to be really hard. I've got to get started now. And I looked at the timing and saw that my UQ would come into effect kind of early September of 2014. And it so happened that a very dear teacher of mine was also teaching a seminar at the same time in Malaysia. And I thought, okay, I'm going to plan everything so that I can open the day after my last paid day of vacation is over. And I'm going to use that time, the paid vacation time, to go to this seminar in Malaysia, get refreshed, get reoriented, motivated, and then when I come back, I'm going to use my last few days to set up all the furniture and teaching supplies, and deal with the cardboard and all of that. And then the very next day is opening day, and so that gave me a very, very clear timeline to adhere to. And a lot had to happen in that time. I had to get approved for a business grant program, approved for loans, had to source all of the furniture, talk to reform construction companies, remodel companies, and then get a bunch of estimates from them and decide like what kind of layout. It was a constant, just so much happening in really about 8 months. Looking back, it was pretty impressive. But that leads me to my next point, which is having a clear structure that leads to the desired outcome, right? So, i.e., a plan of action with clear steps, not a vague aspiration with no clear beginning, middle, or end. And it sounds simple enough, but you'd be surprised how many people have just these really vague aspirations when it comes to things they'd like to see happen in their life. And it's not really their fault, because you have to understand that very often it's the case that there's a lot more in back of what we see than we realize at first. So it's really important to sit down, and you hear it sometimes in the movies where they say work backwards from the end of the story. Well, you can do that with any type of personal goal as well. So if you want to start a business, or let's go something different. Let's say you want to have a certain body fat percentage and a certain body weight and a certain look in the mirror, right? When you look at yourself in the mirror, so you can start with that. That can be your end result, and then you can research what it takes, diet plans, maybe get some blood work done and find out a little bit more about your body type, and then using that information you can kind of fill in the middle with very concrete actions, like how often do I have to work out a week, what kind of diet do I have to stick to, how much sleep do I need to be getting, what types of foods do I need to avoid, which is really like the most important part about diet. It's like a lot of times it's like what you don't eat. And then using that and creating a timeline. There's lots of apps and stuff these days that help you with it, although it can be a lot of work. But if you really want to achieve a goal and you really want to do it, the more focused and objective and clear you are about it, the easier it'll be. And then you can just use that information to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do every day for X amount of time, and by a certain point down the road, I should have my results. If you just say, yeah, I want to get shredded, I don't know, I need to start working out, I need to get like more muscular, and you might be able to like run on that momentum for a week or so, but it's very, very easy to fall off the wagon and just be like, I don't know, man, I'm not seeing any results. Maybe not. And before you know it, 3 months have gone past. You're drinking the beers, eating the donuts, watching TV, and getting nowhere. Whereas if you'd used those 3 months to stick to a clear schedule that you designed based on, valid information, you might be in a really different position. That's true with everything. You just gotta like stick to it. Don't expect results too soon. And there's smaller results along the way. If it's a massive goal like recompositioning your body, or starting a business, or learning a language or a new skill, you can focus on the mini steps. Now I know how to order a beer in Japanese, or now I can talk on the phone and make a reservation or something like that. These little kind of mini successes are very important. They kind of keep the fire going. What did I say for the next one? Oh yeah, number 2. Actually, I'm not going to pay attention to the numbers. They're not in a very good order. So the third one is minimizing or cutting out distraction. This is really huge. For me, I've run into this a lot with, mostly with people in my life. It's very tempting to kind of share what you're up to with the people in your life, whether it's your family or friends or coworkers. And it's not always productive. Surprisingly, not everyone's going to be totally supportive of you. Some may actually be openly unsupportive. So that's an obstacle you may have to deal with. Personally, when I was considering starting a school, my wife was very, very skeptical at the time, and I felt like maybe I shouldn't even mention this to her, because she didn't have the understanding that I did, and so in her eyes, it was this really weird, like crazy thing to do. And a lot of people will treat you like that with your goals, whatever they are. There's a very kind of complicated mix of emotions happening in people's minds. Sometimes it's just fear of things changing. Sometimes it's outright resentment. or sometimes it's a combination of fear and resentment based on people's own lack of initiative and maybe certain almost feelings of like guilt or competitiveness. So you can do yourself a big service sometimes by just keeping your mouth shut, doing your thing, using your time wisely, and using your interactions with said people in your life to maybe focus on things that are kind of just focused on them or your relationship, or kind of benign things that don't bring any sense of being challenged. And also, it can also mean, when talking about minimizing distraction, it can also mean things like maybe avoiding certain people, learning how to say no more often, going out less, focusing more. These things can all be really, really beneficial, because your time can be sucked away very, very easily. It's phenomenal, especially if you already have a busy life, like if you've got a family and work commitments. Your cognitive resources can just be drained before you know it. So it's really, really important to just focus as much as you can on what needs to be done and how to do it, instead of, socializing and lending people your ear when you really feel like, dude, this isn't really helpful. Can you not do this? It happens a lot, in the form of maybe gossiping with coworkers or going out and just talking idle speech, as they call it. It has its place, but you don't want to spend all your waking hours in that, because just 10 years can pass like that, and you're like, oh yeah, remember when I wanted to start a business? What happened? It's subtle and it's dangerous. So distraction's a huge one. And then the last one, so if you got concrete timeline, clear structure that will bring you from the beginning to the end in a logical, well thought out way, and then minimizing distractions so you can focus on that. And then the last one is focusing on the most immediately applicable task, which is really all we can do in life. It's very deceiving. It's very easy to have this sensation that we're kind of, at least in a mental sense, we're kind of disconnected from time in this suspended state where we can bounce back and forth between the present, past, and the future. And we can mentally. And it can lead to this incredible sense of busyness and kind of pseudo accomplishment, when in reality you can actually be much more productive by just focusing on what really needs to be done right now. So an example might be if you want to start a business, maybe you need to think about, okay, where is it going to be, and then once you've found a place, maybe you should inquire about what kind of expenses are going to be involved, before you start thinking about what color the couch is going to be and getting on Amazon and shopping for couches, or what kind of computer you're going to get, or oh man, maybe I should update my wardrobe so I can look more professional. Stuff like that, in the back of your mind that it's really not helping, and you're gonna end up looking like a jackass with a bunch of new clothes and a new couch, but nowhere to use it. So, kind of starting with the base: where, how much, what's the local area like? Am I gonna have parking? What's nearby? And then funding, focusing on filling out the loan paperwork, researching grant programs, waiting until you're approved for that before you start spending money you don't have. Maybe focusing on your finances. How much can you save per month? How much can you save in a year to help you with your business? And then finally, like whittling down into the details, deciding on the layout for your shop, your office, whatever it's going to be, getting multiple estimates from contractors, deciding on the best deal. And then when that's all settled and the funds have come through, then you can start thinking about what color sofa you want, or what color the carpet's going to be, and the odds and ends of just picking your computer and your desk and your chair and teaching supplies and all of that. That'll come together in the end, and it comes together really quickly, provided you've actually built a solid foundation. It feels like nothing, paperwork waiting, phone calls, and then suddenly within a couple of weeks the reform is done, and then The furniture and teaching supplies and computer and desks start arriving, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've got a business here, right? And then it's opening day, and let's hope you've done your preparations and you know what you're doing, and then you can get started. So I'm kind of retooling myself now to get a position as a support coach in software development. And I'm looking at the same situation, right? So concrete timeline, I'm thinking, okay, by January of 2021, I want to go into this and start working. And in terms of having a clear structure, that means I'm going to have to set aside some time, probably at least 1 to 2 hours per day, to build my skill set up, meet with my mentor at least twice a month to kind of check bases, maintain discussions with other people doing the same role, and using some of my time to help with support for free, just to show that I can do it and to get used to it. And minimizing distraction is going to mean I'm going to have to set concrete time to do that, and then probably in December, I'm going to have to take a test with my mentor and be totally honest and open with his feedback and make a decision if it's time to get started with this. And I'm also going to have to do some really crazy stuff like advertise teaching, and make sure I can actually pay this, advertise a teaching position and make sure I can actually pay the salary. And if no one's interested, I'm going to have to start thinking about, okay, well, maybe I'm going to have to sell my school, really go out on a limb and tell parents that I'm selling the school. There's going to be a new teacher coming in. And if no one's interested in that, I'm going to have to tell the parents, I'm sorry, I haven't been able to find a teacher, I haven't been able to find a buyer. I'm going to have to close the school. It's been great. Thank you for 6 years, but life happens, and it's time for the next adventure, These are the types of things you have to deal with if you really want to change your life. And looking back, almost 6 years ago now, when I got started, this was all I wanted, this to open the school and to have it be successful. But life changes. We go through phases. There's some talk about like when you're a child, all you really want is a cookie. That seems like the best thing in the world. And you get the cookie, and it's amazing. And then you grow older and you have more experiences, and you see that cookie differently. You're like, it's just a cookie, Now you have a new goal in mind. So that's what happens in life. But throughout it all, I think it's really important to be appreciative and to maintain a proper perspective on your relationship to things, right? Otherwise, it leads to laziness and arrogance, and that tends to come back to you, and it can be pretty ugly. It's just a cookie, and then, anyway. So, yeah, I hope that's somehow useful. It's definitely something of a rant, but I don't know. I feel like sharing my thoughts sometimes with people, so YouTube's such a good way to do that. So if that is interesting and helpful, please let me know. And that's that. Thanks for watching.